BMW Intelligent Personal Assistant, Reversing Assistant, Multi-beam LED headlights, Command Interface. New cars these days tend to be all about features and acronyms. But let's leave that stuff to the brochures. It's a very pleasant morning and we have here with us the brand new 7th generation BMW 3 Series and the heavily reworked 4th generation Mercedes-Benz C-Class. So let's hop in and go for a drive. Now, the BMW 3 Series is an important car. After all, it is claimed to be the ultimate sports sedan in the world. Now, a trait that has been the key to establishing its title is its throttle response. Now, every time you tap the throttle on a 3 Series, the immediacy with which it responds to power delivery is phenomenal. It's a lot of fun. That's what makes BMWs a lot of fun to drive. Of course, you also have to give credit to its brilliant chassis balance and 50-50 weight distribution. Now, this new car is built on BMW's new CLAR architecture that makes it lighter and stiffer. But in fact, under the hood lies the same 2-liter diesel engine as earlier. In fact, it still develops 188 bhp and 400 Newton meters, and it continues to be mated to an 8-speed automatic gearbox. But there is in fact quite a big difference now, and that's because the previous car's single twin-scroll turbocharger has been replaced by 2 turbochargers, one that spools at low engine speeds and one that spools at high engine speeds. Now, this of course is done to give you better throttle response at lower speeds and at higher speeds. What does this translate to? Well, a more immediate throttle response in sport mode, although I have to be honest here that in comfort and eco mode, there is a fair amount of delay in kick-down acceleration. Which is why I prefer to drive this car in sport or sport individual. Of course, there's still delay in kick-down acceleration. This is a diesel automatic car after all. But you know what? Most of the time, power throttle responses are great, and that's what matters in the real world, just to make a quick maneuver or to overtake a car. So on that account, the 3 Series continues to be quite a fun car to drive. Another aspect I like about the 3 Series is the steering wheel. Now, it may not exactly be oozing with feedback, but I'll tell you what, this is fairly direct and the car really likes to dart into corners, so that makes it a lot of fun to drive. But the issue here comes once you exceed 100 kilometers an hour. In that range, the deficit of power is clearly evident. Moving on to the comfort front, the ride comfort is fairly decent. The suspension has definitely improved from before. But what happens is there's a bit of a lateral movement. There was a lot of lateral movement earlier, but even now there is some amount of lateral movement over broken roads. So you tend to be jiggled about a little bit. Otherwise, the suspension is fairly comfortable. It is a bit noisy though, and you will hear those road imperfections seep into the cabin in terms of noise as well. But on the whole, this is not to an uncomfortable extent. Now, like I said, the C300D may in fact be a heavily reworked and facelifted 4th Gen C-Class, but in fact it has a new 2-liter diesel engine that is one hell of a bruiser. As an engine that displaces 45cc less than a 320D's engine, this thing generates a whopping 53 bhp and 100 Nm more than the 320D's engine. Yes, 500 Newton meters of peak torque from a 2-liter turbo diesel engine. So what does this translate to out on the open road? Well, from the moment you get going, you can instantly tell that this is a considerably more powerful car than the 3 Series we have here. For this thing, when you dab at the throttle, it will just take off. Now, like the 3 Series, this car too has an automatic gearbox, but this is Mercedes' 9G-tronic 9-speed automatic gearbox. Now, unfortunately, like the BMW, this turbo diesel powertrain has its lag in kick-down acceleration. The gearbox will take its time to downshift a couple of gears. So that is a given trait with both these cars. But once the kick-down acceleration does occur, my God, this thing will have you slightly pinned to your seat and speeding into the horizon. The C300D means serious business because the punch it delivers, you simply don't experience it at all in the BMW. For that power is just not there. The end result? Well, in fact, now that I've been driving these two cars back to back, I'll tell you something. From standstill to 100 kilometers an hour, this engine of course feels more powerful out on the open road. But the way the BMW's powertrain is synced, in terms of power delivery and what gear it holds, on that account, the immediacy of the response of the BMW's powertrain somewhat makes up for the lack of power in comparison to this car. So you get that sense of urgency. And whereas kickdown will be slower in this car, but once you get the power, it'll just take off. So now that we've established that the C-Class, the C300D to be specific, is a much sportier and faster car than the BMW 320D, let's get down to the brass tacks of it. Well, the interiors, I personally love the interiors of the Mercedes. I love the materials used. The leather on the steering wheel is fantastic as always in a Mercedes. And even otherwise, the wood finish, the switch gear, the clock here, and the analog dials. I love analog dials, and these look really high rent as always. So all of this, the switch gear, the paddles, the finish, everything just looks and feels way more premium than the BMWs. And I have to say that this definitely does feel like a more complete luxury car. Feature highlights? Well, BMW has its intelligent personal assistant, but the voice commands in this car work just as well. Just pay attention to this, for example. Set temperature to 18 degrees.
Temperature 18 degrees.
See, it works. Other feature highlights? Well, I love the screen. It's nice and large, and it's very easy to navigate. And the multi-beam headlamps are phenomenal as well. I love the dual panel sunroof. You get so much light into the cabin. And elsewhere, if you look at these door pads, if you look at the aluminum finish, switch gear, the memory seat adjusters, and it has memory settings for both of them as well, whereas the BMW only has memory settings for the driver. Another plus point here is that you get adjustable seat cushioning here, so you can extend this further to get more under thigh support. That's a plus point. You get electronic headrests as well in this car. So all in all, in terms of usable electronics and features, I think the C-Class definitely has the BMW licked. You even get electronically adjustable steering wheel. But at the end of the day, you also have to remember that this is India, the land of bad traffic. So it's now time to hop into the rear seat of this car and see just how comfortable it is for the passengers. So now here in the rear seat, I would have to say that it's very well cushioned. The backrest is really supportive. So on that account, it's very nice. The issue here though is that you feel a little cramped for space because you have lesser headroom in here in comparison to the 3 Series, as you'll see in a bit. And otherwise the seat is quite high, and you tend to feel a little bit more caged in over here. And in terms of legroom, there's another issue because you can slide your feet in front of the front passenger seat, but even so, you are just a little bit short on the thigh support and legroom in the back of the C-Class. So now it's time to hop into the back seat of the 3 Series and see what that's like. Now the moment you get into the rear seat of the 3 Series, you will instantly realize that this car definitely feels more spacious in the rear seat, and that's because you got more headroom here than in the C-Class, and you think you have more leg room because you can slide your feet in further into the front seat. Having said that, that's because the seat cushioning is less than in the C-Class, so you can in fact slide in deeper into the seat, and the hip point is also lower. Now that is something that can be a problem over longer journeys. Nonetheless, like in the C-Class, you're left a little short of leg room and under thigh support in the back seat of the 3 Series. But the biggest problem here comes in the form of these footwells. They're very deep, and when you getting in is still easier, but getting out is when your foot can get stuck between the seat base and the front seat. So egress is a little tricky. You got to twist your foot and then get out. So in terms of rear seat comfort, both these cars are more or less the same. While in the C-Class you get a more comfortable rear seat, in the 3 Series you get a little bit more space. In terms of egress, your foot has a problem in the 3 Series, whereas in the C-Class it's your head while entering. It's the door structure, the way it's carved out, so you have a little bit of a problem there. So ergonomically, they aren't the most perfect cars out there, but then you have to remember, internationally, these cars are bought by people who really drive them all the time. The new 3 Series' cabin is more luxurious than ever before, with 4 wood and aluminum finished switchgear, leather upholstery, and 2 rather large screens. One of them being a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and the other being a 10.25-inch infotainment screen. All of this comes together to make the interiors of the new 3 Series quite contemporary with a minimalistic design. So the 3 and the C, well, it's a very tough battle as always. I have to say that with this mid-cycle update, Mercedes has truly taken the game of a facelift forward. As for the 3 Series, well, I've always retained that the BMW customer has always been different. They seek a more engaging driving experience. As a real-world driver's car, the 3 Series is still that little bit more special. It's got something in there. It all boils down ultimately to that urgency in response to the demand for more power. When you dab that throttle, you want that instant power. And while driving in the real world, the BMW does that so well. So the 3 Series then still retains its title of the ultimate sports sedan. The Mercedes-Benz C-Class, meanwhile, is the most complete luxury car here on all accounts.